So, recently in England, there has been a giant battle over the concept of English identity. And this manifested recently because Konstantin Kisin and Fraser Nelson of The Spectator had a discussion about Rishi Sunak. Is he an Englishman? And you got posts like this. I don't think I've ever seen a politician looking more English than this, to be quite honest. Now, in a way, there is something about that I can understand what he's saying, right? So he's dressed as an Englishman in the traditional English garb of a suit, and he's standing in the rain getting wet, and this was when he was announcing his resignation from the position of Prime Minister that no one voted him in for. And yeah, there is a kind of Englishness about this. That's true, but it is an aesthetic.
I hate this. I hate this attitude. I hate this image. I hate this idea that Rishi Sunak somehow looks English. There was like last year a push to try and get people to say that his face was a bit English and the way he held himself was English. I mean, he's right. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter. I could put a dress and makeup on. I'm not a woman, even if I learn to hold myself in like a feminine way or something.
Rosie Parker's screeching at you from across the room.
Well, no, she would agree with me here. It wouldn't make me a woman, right? So the idea that it's a skin suit identity that you can just take on by affecting the mannerisms. And besides, I don't think this is what Englishness is about, right?
And if it is, that's sad.
Yeah, Englishness is not about just being in the rain and looking a bit sad, okay? That's an insult.
Common feature of Englishness.
That's an insult to our national identity. Englishness is innovation, it's restlessness, it's looking at the edges of the map and saying what goes beyond those. It's going into foreign cultures and seducing the women. That's what Englishness is about, all right?
It's nothing different.
It's action and adventure. We've got culture. We're not just sad twats in suits, all right?
Except
for right now.
It's very similar. So when Justin Trudeau goes over to India and he dresses up as an Indian, you can say, oh, I've never seen anyone looking more Indian than this. Well, yeah, they're wearing the trappings of the culture. So yeah, they look like they're from the culture, but there's a reason, for example, that India was thrilled with Rishi Sunak being the Prime Minister. And this is just like, you just got these... I mean, this is the sort of thing. Ex-India company set to run Britain. Oh, really? Why were they so bothered that an Englishman was becoming the Prime Minister of Britain? Why were they so excited?
Why were they celebrating? Why were there so many clips from Indians saying, oh, Empire strikes back?
Yeah. No, it's literally, this entire article is just them talking about like how Indian press were going wild because an Englishman took over as Prime Minister in England. And the answer is, of course, no. Because they know he's an Indian. They recognise him as an Indian.
He knows he's Indian.
He knows he's Indian. That's why he celebrates Dilwali in number 10. His name is Sunak. Like, it's fine for us to say, look, Rishi Sunak is an Indian man who was born and raised in England, which is why he is wearing the trappings of English culture. But he personally identifies himself as an Indian, and he knows he's an Indian. Indians know he's an Indian. We know he's an Indian. That's fine.
Yeah, where's the controversy in that?
Yeah, exactly.
Except for liberals and globalists who want to deracinate people by separating them from their cultural identity and heritage.
Not every people.
Yeah, not every.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
I find Palestinians are certainly Palestinian, and you're not one, Mr. Israeli.
There's
very, very hard boundary there.
I find all this discussion ridiculous.
I'm sure you do.
Okay, I'll let you do yours.
Unfortunately, we are having a massive identity crisis in England. Yeah. See, I don't imagine the Greeks have much of an identity crisis, do they?
I wouldn't say so.
No, because I mean, you've got the Turks right there who are desperately trying to.
It's not just that. I mean, it's so easy to think about it.
Yeah, I know.
There's the ethnic dimension. There's the cultural dimension.
I know.
There's the civic dimension,
the historical inheritance dimension. I mean,
yeah. So where's the problem?
And we should be exactly in the same position as the Greeks. Actually, you know, we've got like a long and impressive heritage. Why are we even having this conversation? Well, the answer is, of course, shit libs. So this is the New Statesman. I just want to read a quick quote from this. I mean, look at the title. Of course, Rishi Sunak is English in his comments.
Just look at all his Anglo-Saxon heritage and ancestry. Oh wait,
just look at how India was celebrating. In his comments on English identity, Konstantin Kisin was giving a voice to racial essentialism, which is dangerously prominent on the right. So
Ethnat Konstantin Kisin has entered the chat.
Ace woke right Konstantin but he's not wrong, right? He's like, you know, Konstantin was like, he's a brown Hindu, which is a totally true statement. And
it's just pointing out the obvious.
Yes, and this kind of biological, or as they put it, racial essentialism, well, unfortunately, and I hate to tell you this, but we are corporeal beings who reproduce through literally relationships that produce children. So through heredity, right? So that means that we exist in the real world first before we are our identities.
Well, it's so weird because they treat the lib you mentioned. They treat the character of Englishness as just a card that you give to people so they feel included.
That's exactly.
But in doing so, they're, for instance, offending the other identities. So what's the problem with saying that, for instance, Rishi Sunak comes from India?
Stelios, can I become a Greek man?
Depends what you mean.
Or can I become a Greek man?
Let's discuss it.
Neither of my parents. Are you
going to give me a raise? What do you want?
Is that all I need? Is it?
Like Stelios has a few trials, and they just involve giving him a lot of money.
Well, I mean,
this is a very Mediterranean.
You can't become ethnically Greek.
Of course not.
And I can't become ethnically English.
Of course not. And
it's a matter of fact. We could talk about cultural continuities.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if I were to move to Greece, I'd be very happy to endorse and throw myself into Greek culture.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't.
You'd like Souvlaki.
I love Slovakia.
Yeah.
I love.
I could never do it. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with seafood cultures.
No, Greek's not seafood culture.
Is it? See, I definitely would.
You do have seafood, but Greek has a lot of just pork and chicken and lamb.
Come on, you can't seafood, fish and chips. Come on.
Anyway, we're getting off.
I have cheese and gravy.
Getting off topic. So, as you can see, this embodies and amplifies the entire sort of lib perspective on this, which is, how dare you suggest that people exist in the world? People are just floating consciousnesses, and if they happen to coincidentally connect to the same ethnic heritage as their parents, which they all do all the time and have since the dawn of time, that is just a coincidence, and you can take nothing from it, and it was just accidental in every single case. And so they say this, right? They say, nationhoods have always changed, or else they become redundant, and all identities have some notion of exclusivity. Okay.
What does redundant mean in that sense? Okay, you've been English, but you've been English for a bit too long, bit redundant now.
Yeah.
Be something new.
Yeah, exactly, right? You can feel the language of modernism in this, right? That is the mechanism through which they distinguish one group from another, the notion of exclusivity. But if we're at the stage that, despite being born and raised and socialised in England all his life, speaking English as his native tongue, with a cheerfully Wycomist accent, Rishi Sunak isn't English, then we have left even a civic form of nationalism behind. And this is an impoverishment of Englishness and a betrayal of the mechanisms by which this country has grown up and grown old. Like, the civic conception of Englishness is about 20 minutes old. Right?
Can I please,
being a citizen?
For all of these kinds of arguments about nationhood changing and the fact, all of these different things, well, you're born and raised in this particular place, may I always just present Yugoslavia?
Yeah.
Yugoslavia. Guess what? You could have been born and raised in Yugoslavia, but you still belonged to a very specific ethnic group, and the second that the borders fell, holding that whole place together, it erupted into ethnic conflict. And that's not necessarily what happens over in the West. That's a very, very Balkan approach to conflict resolution.
But Rishi Sunak wouldn't laud his Indian heritage if he didn't have it. We know, and it's fine to say he's an anglicised Indian man, because he's grown up in England, but he knows he's not English. We know he's not English. And this is essentially the linchpin upon which all of the left-wing globalist lib thinking hinges. And you can see that they've got, well, if we're leaving even that behind, then we're being impoverished. Well, then you be impoverished, because we're leaving that behind. That's just not what it is to be English.
I think that this is fundamentally an Americanism. And I don't say it pejoratively, because in the US, there's a different historical setting that led to the American identity, but European identity is different.
Well, let me get to that in a minute.
In the US, you still have hyphenated Americans. The Irish Americans still see themselves as very, very Irish.
We'll get to it in a minute, if that's all right. So anyway, the point being, this is the flimsy sort of thread by which the globalist conception of identity is hanging. It's just an aesthetic that is born out of nothing for some reason. Who knows why the English are those they are? But anyone can be English for any reason at any time, and you can just identify English, not English, English, not English. Just flip between if you want, right? That's, as far as they're concerned, how it works. Now, we've spoken about this on Lads Hour last week, and this was revelatory. This absolutely revelatory. So we were looking at the Politics Joe podcast, which is again another shitload podcast talking about this, and they have this in the top of their mind, and of course the first thing they want to do is call you a racist. But once that's been done, they realize, oh no, we are English, we are the inheritors of a long and ancient and noble tradition, and actually, where's our parliament? And things like this, right? So actually, even these people are well aware, no, this is an inheritance, this is something physical that is in you, it is something that you carry with you, and it is, as you said, a fact, and it's not something you can just change. Go and watch that, by the way. It was really, really fun, and really, again, really eye-opening. Once you get past their innate ideological defenses, you get to see what they really think, and it's actually really good. Anyway, so Suella Braverman then chimed in recently, and it's nice to see that like the Westminster bubble is downstream of us on this conversation. So we've been talking about this for probably a year or two now, and this has been important because we've been well aware that actually in England the question of who is English is the most important one, and we seem to be winning this battle. And so Suella came on the right side of the issue. She says, I'm a proud British Asian, and of course I'm not English. I never thought that was contentious. But then I saw this exchange between Fraser Nelson and Constantine Kissin and realised too many people are nervous about asserting English identity for what it is, ethnic, racial, and based on ancestry. If we can't even agree who the English are, how on earth are we ever going to defend the culture and values of this country? Great question. Surprisingly based for a conservative. Do you not think, Harry?
I did a daily video talking about this, but I'm still going to say my defence, first and foremost, is the people of this country from whom the culture and values originate. And also, for me, British, I understand because of the empire that we expanded it out, because that's what empires do. They expand out identities to be more inclusive to the people that they end up colonising. But still, to me, British means Welsh, Scottish, English. So that's just quibbles on my part.
It's fine, but to be clear, British has two dimensions, a civic and a kind of cultural, because it's not ethnic, but it has a civic and a cultural dimension. The civic dimension is what she's appealing to here, obviously.
Yes.
Saying, civically, and she's probably brought up in Britain as well, so maybe even culturally. But the point is, you are right. I mean, you can look back at the sort of spread of the Roman identity, which is really interesting. So initially, it's literally Rome, then it's Latium, then it's Italy, then it's I think it was Caracalla who extended it to every free man in the empire, which means everyone in the Mediterranean is a Roman now. And so it's just like and the same thing happened with.
And then the empire collapses.
Yeah, and then the
what a surprise!
And then you end up with a country called Romania, right?
It's
like nowhere near Italy, but it's.
But we're the real Romans, swear.
No, exactly, right? And the same thing is happening with the British identity, where it begins in Britain, expands outwards, and now there are lots of people who don't have an ancestral connection to the country who are like, I'm British, right? Because it's the way that civic identities work. But she's completely right to say, look, I'm not English, obviously. And she expands on this in the article and goes pretty hard right on Fraser Nelson, actually, which is pretty good, actually, I think. She says, in Fraser's world, all it takes to join the tribe is a plane ticket and a birth certificate. This reduction of identity to mere geography explains why we see clashes on our streets between Hindus and Muslims over conflicts thousands of miles away. And it's true. And she's like, look, I don't feel English because I have no generational ties to English soil, no ancestral stories tied to the villages and towns on this land. My heritage, with its rich cultural, racial identity, is something distinct. I'm a British Asian, but I feel a deep love and gratitude, and I feel a deep love and gratitude and loyalty to the country, but I cannot claim to be English, nor should I. This is not exclusionary, it's honest, and it's what living in a multi-ethnic society entails. And that's a great start to get us on the road to actually understanding the problem, because I think, as you were saying, Stelios, this is essentially the Americanization of Europe.
Yeah.
Because I posted this, because this is essentially what it boils down to. The Americans are named after a geographic landmass. Right? Someone called Amerigo or something like that discovered America. And
was it America Vespucci?
I can't remember. Who knows, right? Who cares, right? But the point is, at some point in the 17th century or 15th century, 16th century, some Spanish explorer discovered a piece of land west of Europe, and it got his name attached to it. And then people moved there, and then they adopted that landmass's name as their own. Right? That's not how it works in Europe. That's not how it works in the old world. England is named after the English, as in the people preceded the land and gave their name to the land, not the other way around. And so we do not need to say stupid things like Owen Jones is saying. For example, oh, if you were born in England or grew up in England, you're an Englishman. It's like, no, that's not how that works, actually, because being English was about the people and not the place. For example, if we move to, Papua New Guinea or something, then we will make that England because we are the English, and we will not be Papua New Guineans because we're not Papua New Guineans. And the same with the Greeks. I mean, the Athenians did this, actually. When the Persians invaded, they had to evacuate all of Athens to, what was the...
Salamis.
Salamis, that's right. They didn't stop being Athenians because they're on the run. They were still the Athenians, and they will be the Athenians wherever they go. And it's the same for us. It's not the other way around. And so anyway, yeah, you got amazing responses, which, I mean, this was so great. Swell Braverman, I'm an Indian, and Owen Jones is just like, don't be ridiculous. You're English. It's like, no, Owen, you don't get to do that. From the team that bought you, you can identify as a woman if you want. You are definitely this because you were born here. And this is the same point that Fraser Nelson has been making, and various other people like Christopher Snowden. It's like, no, are you saying these footballers who play for England aren't English? What, like Jarrell Quansah? Yeah, I'm saying he's not English.
Are you saying that economic migrants who are going to come over and play for a team that will pay them the most don't immediately become the nationality that they're playing for? Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Why would I think this guy's English? Do you think he thinks he's English? Like, what about Angel Gomez? Does he think he's English?
Gomez is a particularly English surname.
He's just as English as you and me. Looks English, sounds English.
Nonny Maduka.
Wears his hair in a traditional English style.
Sorry, this guy isn't English and nobody thinks he's English. They're mercenaries who play for our football team because we pay them money. That's just how this works. Dominic Solanke. Sorry, average Englishman, is it? Come on, you guys are preposterous. And the thing is, you are losing the argument. And so then we start getting what are now customary, traditional attempts to destroy the nature of what the English identity is. Right?
So, yeah, one thing that people don't pick up on is that when ethnicities are combined in describing someone. So, for instance, sometimes they say it's an Indian English person or Indian British. They're not explicit with respect to what they're combining, because they could mean, for instance, that different parents, one English parent and one Indian parent, or they could mean, for instance, an English citizen from India. And that's something fundamental. It's fundamentally ambiguous, and it's just ripe for misunderstanding. But it's something that people could just point out and say that, they need to qualify what they mean by it.
Because the postmodern conceptions of these things thrive off of very ambiguous definitions that can be molded into anything.
It's not just that. It's that in previous eras, we never needed a hard definition of these things either. Right?
An Englishman still recognised himself as an Englishman.
No, I know.
Past.
But you didn't have to spend a huge amount of time thinking about this, because there wasn't lots of foreign people in England who were confused.
I think more. I'm thinking more when we went abroad, and you had Cecil Rhodes, for instance. Yeah. He damn well knew what an Englishman was.
He did. Anyway, so let's carry on. So Owen Jones someone was like, well, "Why is England called England, Owen?" And Owen Jones explains why England is called England. It's because the Anglesin, which is an Old English word for the Anglo-Saxon tribes, got over the long process of more than 1,000 years. The language developed to sound the word English rather than Anglesin. And so that's literally, yes, we agree we are a collection of Germanic tribes.
The thing is, I love that
I'm a single ethnicity.
You're not going to like the answer. Oh, and I already knew this.
Yeah, but what's wrong with that answer?
I already knew that. Well, I suggested that he was doing the thing.
Why?
The thing that they always do, which is your ancestors were immigrants who were of European tribes that were basically indistinguishable from the other tribes that were around them. Therefore, open your doors to Syria.
He's trying to unbake the cake. It's like, what cake is that? Oh, it's not a chocolate cake. Why? Well, the flour came from this cupboard,
There's some eggs in there. Eggs
the
aren't
cream
chocolate.
came from the fridge. This is not a chocolate cake. And it's like, oh, okay, then. I guess I won't enjoy it. What are you doing, Owen? There's nothing wrong with this answer.
I really can't imagine Owen Jones reading Tacitus.
No, of course.
To be fair, though, he is, as he revealed in the replies, a subversive Welshman. So we can't expect
his
any
name's
less.
Owen Jones.
Yeah.
So we could have guessed that. But anyway, so then he's like, well, so Swallow was claiming to be English here. No, she wasn't claiming to be English here. Right? What she was being is a representative, a substantive representative in the Hannah Pitkin sense of what this is. So he's just flailing. He's just desperate. Like, no, you have to be English. It's like, why does she have to be English? Why does she have...
Where does she say that she's English?
She doesn't.
In this?
Right? He's trying to make it that she says, but she doesn't. Right? But why does she have to be? It's okay. We don't hate Swella Braverman because she's not English, Owen. We're not going to kick her out of the country because she's not English, which is the thing that you seem to think that everyone's thinking, right? And so the thing carried on with Humza Yousaf. Humza Yousaf, and everyone's like, hang on a second. Is Humza Yousaf Scottish? And Fraser Nelson's like, no. No one would seriously say Humza Yousaf is not really Scottish. It's an inclusive identity. There are two definitions.
According to whom?
According to Fraser Nelson. Right, there are two definitions, ethnic and civic. The same is true for Englishness. Now, let's stop there. There is no civic identity of Englishness. English is an ethnic identity. There's nothing you can get on a piece of paper that gives you like a little certificate. You have English civic identity now.
Well, if it's both ethnic, which is based on heritage and ancestry, and civic, which is based on
legal status,
legal norms, well, then it can't be both at the same time. So it's nothing. Well, I mean, again, as with all of these kinds of definitional discussions, the end point is to reduce it to nothing, yes. Which is what he does in the second sentence, where he says, "Oh, it's a free country. No one's obliged to call themselves." Why do you even care, bro? Why are we even having this conversation? Nothing means.
Well, he literally says, "Not sure why the battle's still raging."
Nothing means anything. So why do we care?
But
interestingly, there's no mention of the cultural.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Maybe he conflates it with civic, which
maybe
says a lot.
Yeah, it does. But then he follows up and goes, "Oh, hang on a second. I should have said that no one using their real name would say Humza Yousaf is not really Scottish, and for good reason. They'd be embarrassed to defend that position in front of their friends. Ethno-nationalism sits ill with the culture of this country." Let's have a look at the replies to this, shall we?
Everybody.
Oh, the first one is Bo. Bo Dade. His real name, Humza Yousaf, is not really Scottish, Fraser. He is a Pakistani man. But the thing is, right...
Bo's profile is perfect for this kind of response as well, his picture.
It is, and this kind of ratio as well. Like
I threw one out as well. Josh threw one in there.
Just everyone, just shut
There's
up.
Josh.
Yeah, just shut up, Fraser. Like we are quite happy to tell you that obviously Humza Yousaf is not Scottish, and the reason I know
I have defended this kind of position in front of friends before, and most of the time after about 5 minutes, it's really, really easy to make them go, "Yeah, you know what? That's fair enough. You're right."
The thing is, though, the person I would go to identify whether Humza Yousaf is Scottish or not is Humza Yousaf.
I'm very proud of being the first Scottish Pakistani to become First Minister of Scotland. So I'm a son of the soil there in Pakistan. I've been there for nearly...
Son of the soil of Pakistan.
He's a blood and soil nationalist for Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Fraser. So this is that evil ethno-nationalism you were talking about, just coming out of the mouth of Humza Yousaf. And this is just your position totally destroyed. You have nothing.
It's funny, again, because you can see how they switch their rhetoric. They switch because last year, when the protests and riots were happening, all of a sudden, Humza Yousaf was saying on camera, I might move, but also, I'm as Scottish as they come. Cut me and I bleed Scottish blood. And I suggested, well, you don't need to, that would be barbaric. That would be awful. You can just take a 23andMe test and we'll find out just how Scottish you are, Humza.
Yeah, but he knows he's not, and that's fine. It's okay.
Well, he knows he's not, but he's willing to say it if it means that he thinks he can get something out of it.
But this is the point. I don't want to live a lie. I know Humza Yousaf is a Pakistani man. He knows this. Why is Fraser Nelson committed to this? Because they're liars.
Because Fraser Nelson's an idiot.
And also because a lot of these establishment journalists and voices, whatever the role is, they only have a problem with European ethnicity.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like they're never trying to deconstruct Indian identity or anything like that. But then you get like, again, just people like Dan Hodges here. It's like, right, okay, I seem to have worked it out what the right is saying. If you're born in England, live in England, identify as English but are black or brown, you're not English. But if you're born outside of England, have never set foot in England, but identify as English and are white, you are. And it's like, Dan, it's about your heritage. Right? You inherit your ethnic identity. You can't disinherit it, and you can't choose someone else's. It is an immutable fact about you, and that's your problem with this, isn't it? The problem that you have is that it doesn't get to be changed. Yes, Dan, we are physical beings who have things happen to us before we're even born, and we are given these things, and we don't get to change them. That's what this is.
On this point that he's got here, Elon Musk is English, but Rishi Sunak isn't. If Elon Musk is honest in saying that the vast majority of his ancestry is English... Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah,
and I love Dan. I'm not entirely sure how to process this stuff anymore, and so I just replied, "Well, why do dogs give birth to puppies, not kittens?" You know, like it's literally you inherit this from your parents, Dan. You know that you're lying. You know that you've lost this argument, and they've just retreated to, I can't even possibly begin to understand what anyone is saying. Well, nonsense. And we can, actually.
Appeal to stupidity. The last resort of the shit lib.
Yeah, Dan Hodges, well, I'm just too retarded to understand.
I can't understand because I've got brain damage, actually.
Well, if you want to understand, go and get the latest copy of Islander, because in this, I'm discussing exactly that, right? So, my essay is an essay about the Earth Stepper, the Wanderer, the old Anglo-Saxon poem, beautifully rendered, isn't it? About the dispossession of the English during the Viking invasions. And I got a new translation of it, and I've got a nice long essay next to it describing and explaining what I think is the important thing in it. And because this is the question of our time, and I've been hammering this for ages, it matters, right? This matters. We have to be able to self-identify in opposition to other peoples. And so, yeah, go and get this. It's only going to be around for like 3 more weeks or something. It won't be reprinted again, and I promise you will miss it if you don't get it.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.